Hello and welcome to this discussion. I'm Colin Hume. I'm a caller, dance writer, musician. I never expected to be a chat show host at 75, but as everyone says, we're living in strange times. We're all amazed at the number of people attending, over 120. Either you're really bored or you're hoping for some good answers. This discussion is being presented by the Friends of Cecil Sharp House. If you want to learn more, go to fcsh.org.uk. And if you'd like to donate to a worthwhile cause, we recommend NIFTY, the National Youth Folklore Troupe of England, not to be confused with the similarly named organisation set up by EFTAS. I've been a fan of NIFTY since they started many years ago. Read more about them at nyfte.org.uk. And the donation link is on Facebook and in your webinar invitations. We're recording this to be publicly available. The link will be put onto fcsh.org.uk. I'm pleased to say that to keep things running smoothly, Rebecca Valencia from Oklahoma is moderating. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen if you're on a computer. And Rebecca will pop up like a good fairy and grant your wishes, if appropriate. If you want to chat to each other, make sure that the to line is set to all panelists and attendees. And we'll have a more general chat session at the end. I know more about the dance scene in England than in North America. Folk dance, social dance, English country dance, whatever you call it, you know what I'm talking about. The scene isn't good and it's getting worse. Many clubs have folded in the past few years, and some clubs are never going to restart once coronavirus loses its grip. Many clubs have a small number of aging dancers, mainly the same dancers and the same committee that they had 20 or 30 years ago. So what's the answer? I believe that the only way folk dancing, in England at least, can ever make a recovery is for the existing clubs to fold, and then, perhaps after a gap, for new clubs to appear. I realise this is a gloomy prospect for me as well as for other dancers and callers, but I think the scales have tipped too far. Young people walking into most dance clubs in England are going to think, these people are older than my parents. What am I doing here? I don't know whether this is true in the States, but I suspect it is for the English groups at least. But against the odds, Bernie Culkin and Louise Siddons have both started new dance groups in the past few years. We all want to know how they did that. First of all, introductions. Bernie Culkin is English and lives in Manchester in the northwest of England. Louise has dual nationality. She was born in England and now lives in Oklahoma, which is south central United States. So, Bernie, how long have you been dancing and calling, and what drew you to these activities?
I was going to be asked this question, so I had to go back and look it up. So I started dancing in 2011. So I celebrate my 10th anniversary next year. I started dancing in Malvern in Worcestershire, and I was encouraged to start calling a year afterwards. So quite quickly, I became caller, but I was introduced quite gradually into it. So I did just one dance and then just gradually built up from there. So they were very encouraging at that club.
And what drew you to these activities?
I started, a friend was at a ceilidh. It was her mother-in-law's birthday. And so she texted me from this party saying, oh, we're doing this ceilidh, it's great fun, we should, try and do this. And I said, oh, that's great, I'd love to try that. That was on the Saturday. On the Monday, she'd found a club and we were there Monday evening. It was a way of us, we both worked from home, so it was a way of us to kind of do something that kind of we would talk to other adults. Our children were both at nursery at the time, so again, it was something that wasn't related to children either, and just got us out to do something fun. And I got hooked instantly on it and found this whole world that was out there, festivals, weekends, and thought, how have I never heard of this before? And the rest is history, as it says.
Okay. And Louise, the same thing. How long have you been dancing and calling, and what drew you to these activities?
I started dancing social folk dance in 2010. No, I lie, 2008. And before that had been a swing dancer. So I moved to a new place, and the friend that I'd been swing dancing with obviously did not move with me. And so I was looking for a dance that I could do by myself. And the local contra group had been advertising, and it was free the first time, and you could show up alone. And so I did. And a little bit like Bernie, I was hooked from the get-go. So I did that contra dance, and then I looked around like there's got to be more of this. How can I do more? And someone said, oh, you should try English. And so I went to the English country dance down the road, and it was the person who leads that dance, Ray Bantle in Ann Arbor, Michigan, who said, you should try calling. So I started doing a workshop with him about 6 months later. And then a year later moved to Oklahoma. So jumped in with both feet, kind of showed up at an English dance and a contra dance and said, I'm a caller. I would like practice. And they were very sweet about embracing me and continuing workshops and letting me learn how to call. So.
Okay. And as I said, what drew you to these activities?
I think I knew from swing dancing that I loved dancing, and in a new place, I also thought a dance community is a nice way to meet people because I knew nobody and was meeting people through work. But as an academic, people are pretty blinkered, work focused, and so I thought I need to get out and meet people who are not necessarily academics and have kind of a social life. And yeah, dancing was a way to do that. That wasn't just like going to a bar or something less active.
Yeah. By the way, what I'm doing is known as investigative journalism. In other words, asking you questions you might not want to answer. So, do you agree with me that the existing clubs have to go? Bernie?
No, I don't think so. I think that's very bleak to say they have to go.
Yeah, I agree, it is very bleak.
Yeah, but whether they can attract new dancers is a different story. I mean, I'm quite fortunate that here in the Northwest, the clubs that I'm part of have good numbers and have been very welcoming to me as well. I can't say that's been my experience in other places that I've been to dance. Yeah, I'm grateful that I moved here, not elsewhere.
Yeah. Louise, do you agree with me?
I'm going to go with Bernie on this one and say no. I think some individual clubs might naturally through attrition. I think, as you pointed out, that's already happening to some clubs. And so I think that it will take a direct effort for clubs to survive. And I think that one of the things they're going to have to do is be a little more open. Bernie's right. The ones that are welcoming and that are excited to see new people, but also ones that are interested in diversifying their own repertoire and experience are likely to be more successful. So that's my, I think that you can look at genres that are thriving. You know, in the States, English is dying out and Contra is doing quite well. It's smaller, but it goes in waves and people are sort of anticipating that kind of shrinking and growing again. And I think no one gets the sense that it's dying out, whereas English is absolutely aging itself to death.
Yeah. Okay, so what made you two start a new group? When was it? And did you have specific aims? Let me start with Louise this time.
I started a group because a group of students asked me to. So I teach at Oklahoma State University, and we were driving down to Oklahoma City. That was the closest contra dance. And we had a group of contra dancers who we realized as we met at the Oklahoma City dance that we were all from Stillwater. So we started driving back and forth together. But then it was one student had moved to Stillwater from Asheville, North Carolina, and brought a bunch of her friends with her and kind of got them into it. And so they came to me and said, hey, you're a caller and you live in Stillwater. Why don't we just dance in Stillwater instead of driving an hour each way to go dance? And so it was their initiative, basically, that prompted the founding of our group.
Okay. And how long ago was that?
That was quite a long time ago. That was probably, I should have looked things up like Bernie did, maybe about 2012.
Okay. Okay, so Bernie, what made you start a new group and when was it? And did you have specific aims?
So, like Louise, I was approached. I'm going to blame Chris and Trish Nuttall for it, who approached me. I'd been living here a year, and they said, was I interested in starting a new club? They knew of other people as well who were interested in dancing, but to a slightly higher standard than was in normal clubs, if I can say that. And that intrigued me. I was looking for opportunities to improve my own calling as well. So I thought, well, this is a good chance for me to work on my calling as well, and to see whether it's possible to have a successful club where you actually do some teaching. Yeah. And so Kindred Spirits Folk Dance Club was set up in 2017, and we celebrate our 3rd anniversary. We'll be celebrating it virtually in September.
Yeah.
So that's how we started. Yeah. So
no
the specific aim was to raise the standard of English dancing. Yeah.
I think that's a very good aim. I wish more clubs did that. Oh, here's the little fairy popping up. Does this mean you're going to ask a question, Rebecca?
I will ask questions as you are ready for me to ask questions. When I pop up, it just means I have one that's relevant. It doesn't mean I have to ask it right away.
No, go ahead.
All right. I've got a couple of relevant questions. First, we have one. As the premise, are we saying that like no more dances, workshops, etc., or just that the clubs should pack up?
Well, I think they should pack up. But that's me. The other two disagree. No, I wasn't talking particularly about workshops. I think the general club nights are not inspiring. It's not just that people are old, like me, I admit it, I'm old, but some of them are pretty dead, and at least I'm fairly lively. And I think if you walk into a club and they're all plodding through some complicated routine, you're not going to be inspired. You're not going to think, oh, wow, I wish I could do that. You think, oh, don't think much of that. And you go. That's my opinion. And Bernie and Louise may have other opinions.
I'm curious what you would replace it with. I mean, are we suggesting that new clubs should replace old ones, new ones that are more lively?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, next question.
All right, we have another question about whether were the clubs that you first joined, I think this is directed toward Bernie and Louise, more youthful when you first started dancing?
Mine was not, no. I love Malvern Folk Dance Club today, but no, I was the youngest person there by quite a way. But that didn't put me off. They were youthful in nature. And for me, that's the difference. I don't think this is an age thing at all. I think it's about attitude and how welcoming you are. And yeah, the type of dances that you do are important, and the type of music that you use. Like, they weren't ploddy dancers. So it was it was easy for me to fall in love with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because the dances that I went to, the contra dances, were actually older, probably on average, than the English dances in Michigan, which is because the English dances attracted graduate students and kind of not so much college age, but a little bit of college age student participation, whereas the contra dance was all kind of a fixed community, and sometimes they would bring their small children, so they were in their 30s, 40s maybe, but the dancers themselves were older. And my experience was that the older the dancer, the more welcoming and friendly they were. And so that was also part of my experience. I actually found myself heading towards the older people in the room because I knew that they would say yes if I asked them to dance. They didn't mind that I was new. And so there was that, I think Bernie's point about it's not necessarily age alone that is the issue. When age is an issue, I think it's often because of ability. And so the flip side is that in the group that we started that was all college students, we morphed over time from a contra group to an English group because they were interested in the musicality and in the precision of the dancing. And so we acquired this goal of better dancing that we hadn't started with at all, because they realized that there was potential when you have kind of youth in terms of physical fitness in the room, which, as Bernie and Colin both point out, is not limited to young people, but at least in our groups in Oklahoma, is often tracked with youth.
Yeah. Okay, hope that answers the questions to some extent. Have you got any more, Rebecca?
I have all kinds of questions rolling in. I think the last one I'll ask for now is a question. I think it was about a comment that you made, Bernie. Does higher standard mean more challenging dances or more correct and precise dancing?
Good question.
A mixture of both, actually. So initially it was more correct dancing. So when we do right hand stars, we do it as a handshake hold. And when we're doing our circles, we're trying to do nice circles, not our arms down. So things like that. But as we have gone on, I've introduced what I call a thinking dance. So this is a dance that would typically be done at a festival workshop, but it's just a way of just doing something that's a little bit more challenging than you would do normally at a club evening. And they've been really successful, and I've been so amazed at how well, you know, the dancers have coped with these, because most of them aren't festival or weekend dancers, they are club dancers, and they've been brilliant. So have a look at our YouTube channel for some of them. I've videoed them because I've been so proud of how well they've done that I just wanted to show them, you know, how well they were dancing. So so a mixture of the two, but it's not, I hope it's not constant keep your arms up, me banging on the floor. It's every now and then I would just, you know, just stop the dancers and say, right, I'd like you just to concentrate on this, and can you just work on that this evening, and off we go. Otherwise, God, that would be a really boring club to go to if there was just someone at the front just telling you everything that was wrong. So so it's little enough, and that I hope that's how it comes across anyway.
I think that was how it was in Cecil Sharp's day. These terrifying old women would actually stop everything and say, no, that's not right, and so on. And people were happy with that, it appears, but things have changed.
I have been known to stop a dance. So if I'm sure there are some of my club members are on here tonight, I have been known to stop a dance and tell them that I know they can do it better, and explain what I think they can do better, and off they go again, and let them go, and they do, and they always rise to the challenge, and it's fabulous. And I, as I've said, so proud of how well they are dancing. and really annoyed that COVID got in the way.
Well, yes, aren't we all? So I was going to ask about advertising, but Louise, presumably you didn't need to advertise because you already had your students.
We did have to advertise. The core of students who started the group, there were about 5 of them, which is not enough for a dance, really. And so they did a lot of work, mostly on campus. We had good networks. They became a student club, and so then they had access to university advertising venues, and they put posters up everywhere, and they started a Facebook group. So they were engaging on different levels with getting the word out. And then we partnered with the statewide organization to encourage dancers from other cities to come to us and help support the group at the beginning. And then as time went on, it became much easier to advertise by word of mouth. But we used things like community calendars, the local, sort of the equivalent of the local paper, which went online, trying to get the word beyond just the university, because we realized that in order to be sustainable, we needed some community support as well.
And so who came along? Experienced dancers or novices or in-betweens or a mixture?
We had experienced dancers come from other cities, yeah, and then we had a ton of new people from the community, some of whom had done it in other places they'd lived, but a lot of whom were completely new to it. And so we ended up splitting into a monthly dance that was open to everyone and was primarily contra because of the bands that we could hire and their repertoire. And pretty basic level, kind of beginner level contra dances. And then we had a weekly sort of student club meeting that was really only open to the students. And there we got much more diverse. We had the flexibility of using recorded music. They were interested, as I think I might have already said, in English as a way to really think through musicality and timing. We had a few of them who were very interested in improving their dancing in that way specifically. And in the weekly classes, it became a workshop kind of feel. And so it wasn't me necessarily stopping the dance. It was them saying, wait, that didn't feel right. Like, what am I doing wrong here? And so we might run a dance 2 or 3 times until they felt good about it, which we would never have done at the monthly dance.
And I know when I was talking to you last week, you said that the students were involved in the decision making. And I think that's really important. You need people to feel involved. They don't just turn up, pay their money, dance and leave. And I think one of the reasons clubs in England are in trouble is that we don't have the concept of a dance community, which people in the States often talk about. So the dancers aren't involved. They may think, why don't they do something? But they wouldn't be willing to put themselves out. Would you agree with that?
I would agree that community is a very, very important kind of core value of social folk dance in the United States. Yeah, I don't think you can go to an event and not have the concept or the word community pop up at some point. And, you know, we behave like a community when things happen to people in our community. We help out. You know, we had a community member whose barn burned down and workshop, and we all chipped in money to rebuild it. So we go way beyond just like showing up at dances in terms of our sense of community. And I think part of that also comes from once you realize there is that whole big dance community out there, you start traveling to go to weekends and workshops and things. And then the community becomes a source of hospitality. And so people stay with each other and build connections that way. And I don't know if there's more of that in the States, if we're just more willing to drive long distances for not very convincing reasons than you all are.
That's certainly true, yes. But I really do think there's more of a sense of dance community in the States than there is in England, yeah. Okay, so Bernie, how did you advertise?
That's what you mean by, sorry,
yeah.
can I just come back on that one, Colin? In terms of dance community, I mean, if you're talking in terms of how people are supporting each other, I would say that the dance clubs are a really important, you know, a really good community at providing that support and, you know, oh, we haven't seen so-and-so for so long, you know, how are they? And the connections across the UK, certainly, you know, I've heard so-and-so isn't very well, you know, how are they doing? That kind of thing. But if you're talking about sense of community as in organising events, that's different. So what do you mean? Because you started by they have an input into how the event is run.
Yep.
So what do you mean by community?
Well, this is not fair. I'm supposed to be asking you the question.
Can you clarify, please, for the panelists?
Yeah, sure. Well, in the States, as I say, they use this phrase dance community a lot. And okay, what do I mean by it? Yes, I agree with you. There are clubs who get involved with each other. There are clubs that do things apart from dance. They will go out to a theatre trip, or they will go out for a meal somewhere. And I think that is all part of community. But on the other hand, I remember I was calling at a club and I said something about socializing, and one woman said to me indignantly, "I don't come here to socialize, I come here to dance." And I thought, well, that's a real shame, because this is supposed to be social dancing. So I'm not sure that I can define community very well. And I agree with you that there are clubs who do care about their members, and they will say, so-and-so hasn't been around for a long time, or so-and-so's ill, we got a card out, would you please all sign it? So yes, you're right, that is part of a community. Maybe it's just that because we don't use the phrase dance community the way they do in the States, that I fear it doesn't exist. And maybe I'm wrong and it does.
Yeah, I think it does exist.
Okay.
I certainly felt it moving areas. For the first time, moving from Malvern to Cheshire,
yeah.
It was the first time I'd moved where I'd been involved in dance, and I had this instant friendship group up in the northwest that I would never have had if I hadn't have found English country dancing. And they were, you come here, these are the clubs, and it was so easy to settle into a new area because of English country dancing. So I do disagree with you that community's not there in the UK.
To me, that makes it surprising. You had said earlier, Bernie, that you didn't when you discovered it, you were like, how have I never known about this before? And so there's this community. I mean, there is, and I agree with you that there is, once I got into the dance community in the UK, then people were like, oh, and if you're traveling here, you should do this. And like, they know about each other, which to me is one of the definitions of community, right? But I wonder why no one outside of it knows about them.
I know, I still can't figure that out now. How do we get word out that there is this group?
Because I think it's one of the paradoxes of community is that the tighter knit the community, the less they try to attract outsiders.
Yes, there's a danger of the us and them. We don't want any new people. They won't know how to dance Newcastle. We don't want them here. Maybe that's extreme, but I'm determined to be controversial. This is advertised as being controversial. So it's part of my brief. Okay, so Bernie, how did you advertise your group?
So when we first started, we did design some posters. I've got a friend who's a graphic designer who put some posters together for us that went around the local area. But the one that seemed to work for us was obviously word of mouth, but Facebook has been quite a good way for us to let people know we exist. So I'm not just a Facebook page, but I would then post onto community groups. Otherwise, how do people find you? So our group is in Middlewich in Cheshire. So there's the Middlewich community group, and then there's that's the one that springs to the top of my mind. But I let people know that we are dancing, and yeah, that's brought in some people, not many, but one or two, and then obviously word of mouth. But then that's dancers again keeping it within their own community. So I think I still need to find a better way of using social media to attract new dancers. So that's my next challenge and something that I've been thinking about during lockdown.
Okay. So here's one for both of you. Did anyone object to the way you were running things?
No.
Excellent.
Uh,
I mean, one wonders if
Well,
people
because it was
vote
a
with their
new-
feet.
Well, that's true. If they really don't like
Oh,
it, they don't
yeah.
come back. Yeah. But they
That's
might.
it. And
speak
we
up.
did have people who turned up once and didn't come back. And I think there are various reasons for that. I think we had people who I knew were dancers who came and never came back. So it's obviously not what they want, and that's fine. But then we had some new people turn up and they didn't come back. And again, I reflected quite a lot on, well, what is it why did those new people not come back? And I think sometimes it's about, well, it wasn't quite what they thought it was going to be. So I thought, well, how can we show people what it's going to be like before you come in through the door? And that's why I created these videos and put them on YouTube and then shared onto my page so that people would have a better idea of what it was that we do. Because I think when you say English country dancing, that doesn't mean anything to very many people, so they want to see it. So I think that was helpful, but I still think you're going to get people who come through the door, you know, because they just want to see what it's like, and then they find out it isn't for them. But on the whole, we are growing.
I have had people tell me why. I had a friend who is an exceptionally skilled ballroom dancer, and she came to one of our monthly dances, which, like I said, is very beginner oriented. And she said, I can't do this because it's damaging my technique. So she was 100% kind of, I am too good a dancer for this dance community, which was probably accurate. You know, I mean, that she wasn't our target audience. And then we had a group, because the people who, at least in the States, have heard of English country dancing, if they're not dancers already, are evangelical conservative homeschooling type communities, basically. And in Oklahoma, we have several of those, and they turned up and they came a few times. And then one of the fathers got very offended that strangers were asking his daughter to dance. And so he asked me if I could make a rule that you could not dance with people you didn't know. And I said, no, that's antithetical to the whole philosophy of what we're doing here. So I'm afraid this maybe isn't the right community for you. And they haven't come back. You know, the flip side is we have a couple who they come with their son, who is a wheelchair user, and he plays, he has a drum and he has a xylophone, and he plays along with the music while they dance. And they have been coming for years. So that's also a kind of voting with your feet, right? They're finding it a welcoming environment, and people who come chat to the son while he's sitting on the side, and it's just very friendly. And so I think that kind of welcoming is important.
Yeah, your thing about the dancer who said she was too good, you get some music teachers who say that their students shouldn't play folk music because it would damage their ability to play classical. And I don't think there's any truth in that. But that's a side issue, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. What do you do differently which contributed to your success? Bernie, I know you've got a long list. You told me you had a long list.
I did, yeah. Well, I went back to Chris and Trish when I knew I was going to do this, and thought, well, what is it that we do differently? And we talked a lot about what it was that we wanted this club to be like, and so we've reflected a lot on our experiences of dance. You know, what things were good that we'd like to bring into Kindred Spirits, and what things weren't so good that we wanted to change.
Yeah.
So that starts from, I know we've talked a lot about the welcome. So we always make sure that one of us is around to welcome new people through the door. We find out what their experiences are of dancing, because I've turned up to clubs before as a new face and they've assumed I don't dance at all. And
Yeah.
I think it's interesting when you're in that experience, you know. So so yeah, just find out what they've done, and then introduce them to a few people as well, so that other people will then go and help them to dance.
Yeah.
Or sorry, ask them to dance. Chris and Trish are really good at going and dancing with any new people who turn up, and they take that as their responsibility. Nobody sits out unless they really want to. If anybody sits out, it's Chris or Trish. So they are really making a huge investment in time in this club by putting themselves out, you know, by standing at the side. But I think that's really important, that people are coming to the club and they're getting as much opportunity to dance as possible. So that was really important, that nobody sat out unless they really wanted to. And if that means that I have to go and dance, I will go and dance as well, so that everybody is dancing. I also took on the responsibility of teaching. So if somebody came into our club and they had never danced before, it was my responsibility to teach them the steps. I still get mortified now when I see new people turn up and their little set teaches them how to set or to do a figure of 8, and the rest of the long way set all stands and watches. I remember being in that position myself. So if ever we have anything like that, me as the caller is like, this is how we do the set, and I demonstrate how to do a set, and then we will all do a set, you know, so there isn't that horrible staring.
Yes, and you're not looking at them while you say it. Yeah.
No, and I use that as a reminder as well to other dancers of, this is how we do it, you know, let's all just make sure that we haven't got into bad habits or anything. So it's a good opportunity there as well. It's really important that you're allowed to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, and this club should be a safe environment for me as a caller to make a mistake, but also as a dancer to make mistakes. Making mistakes is part of learning, and the really good dancers make mistakes and find a way to get out of it without disrupting the set. And so I try and teach how to get out of trouble as well. You know, if you've made a mistake, what can you do to get out of it?
Oh, that's good, because a lot of people don't teach that, and I think that's important. Some dancers, as soon as they've made a mistake, it's as if they've failed the exam, and they just stand there and look at the floor, and you can't do anything with them. And I try and tell people how to get out of things and how to recover. Yeah.
But we also try and do it with a smile, and you just laugh it off, because it happens. So, you know, I remember being when I started dancing, I went to a ball and I was tutted at because I'd made a mistake. And I still remember that feeling now of, you know, that I was mortified, you know, because I didn't mean, who means to make a mistake? No one does. So, so it's really important that we laugh it off. And again, this is where Chris and Trish are really important, because they are experienced dancers and the others can see that, and they make mistakes and they just laugh about it, and that just relaxes everybody else, doesn't it? You know, I can only do part of that job, but you know, who are your main dancers on that dance floor, giving that same ethos of, yeah, we're trying to dance well, but at the end of the day, we're here to have fun. We've all paid our money. We want to have fun. Oh, you know, it's a Monday evening. Yeah, it's raining. That's why I can't do a turn single the right way this time. So,
Yeah.
so things like that are, you know, we try to keep that element of fun in whatever we're doing.
Yeah, people are always delighted when I make a mistake when I'm dancing, because for some reason they don't think I do. And I say, yeah, I do make mistakes, but I recover from them. And that's a skill that you need to learn.
There is this wonderful video on YouTube. Everyone should go and look at it. It's from the Lichfield Folk Festival. And I point my dancers to this, of me in the dance in the long way set going wrong every turn of the dance. I just can't get it right at all. So I do like to point them in that direction, because it's out there on the World Wide Web that I'm getting it wrong completely. But hopefully I'm not messing up the set whilst I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably enough of a lecture from me about what we do differently. Louise, do you want to take over for a bit?
I would love to. I mean, I would love to pick up on some of the things that you said, because you know, I learned from Carol Berry, who is the sort of senior English caller in Oklahoma City. She started the group and was the person who really taught me how to be an English caller. Once I moved to Oklahoma, she will always dance if there is someone sitting out. She always offers to dance. And for me, especially as a beginning caller, it was really hard to dance and call at the same time. And so I was scared of doing it, because I'm like, well, if I do this, I'm just going to call badly, and who does that serve? And the realization that calling badly actually can be a good thing in this backwards sort of way, where not only are you allowing that person who otherwise would have been sitting out to dance, but also you're teaching the dancers that it's okay to make mistakes, because there you are doing it potentially. But also you're inviting them to become a team with you, right? So especially early on, but I suspect still now, I say like, okay, well, you know, I'm gonna call and dance, and help me out if I get lost, kind of inviting them to be on my team instead of sort of I am the authoritative caller and you're just stuck with that. And that translated into our student group. I think that one of the things that we did differently is that particularly when we started, and as when the group kind of peaked in maybe 2014, 15, and then I went on sabbatical and we got a lot smaller, and that changed how we did things. But when we were a group, we didn't sort of say, well, your job is this and your job is that. It was just like, everyone who's part of the student group, show up half an hour early to the monthly dance, and we together will organize this thing. You know, we were using a community center space, and so we had to put out chairs, and we had to set up the band, and we had to set up the welcome table. And it was just whoever showed up for that half hour chipped in and participated. And then what Bernie said about the experienced dancers, who in the San Francisco Bay Area, they call them angel dancers. I think that's a pretty common phrase, maybe more in ballroom communities. But they're people who basically are part of the organization and volunteer to ask people standing out to dance. And it's a way of making sure that people are welcome. But we had have an unofficial rule of sort of, particularly in the first half of the dance, you have to be asking new people to dance if you see them. It can't just be come and dance with the 4 people you like dancing with, and leave everyone else to struggle. And then the last thing I wanted to say about what we do differently, it wasn't different when we started, but we hung on to it after other dances got rid of it, which was our introductory workshop. And I think particularly when you are in a community where almost everyone coming is not a dancer, you know, like half the people who came to our dances every time were new completely to those monthly dances. And so having an intro workshop where they were welcomed and they felt like, oh, there's a lot of people here who don't know what they're doing, but also I am getting a lesson in how to do this. I think that folk dance prides itself on being the kind of dance where you can walk in and succeed, but that's such an uncommon phenomenon that no one trusts that that's true, right? So you get people walking in and they're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. If you get their hands in a circle and you start talking about it, if you just show them how to do a setting step while you're waiting for other people to arrive, anything that you do that is overtly teaching. And I think in a university context, perhaps that was exacerbated. People really expected something to be taught.
Yeah.
And that gave me a lot of leeway, because then I could, particularly in our weekly workshops, I could just be a teacher, and no one was surprised or offended by that. And they were in fact inviting it more and more as we went on. But that introductory workshop, I think, is quite valuable in terms of not even teaching particular skills, although we do try to teach skills and also kind of community norms, but also just to get people relaxed and feeling like, okay, they said that anyone could show up and do this, and they really meant it, because there's a little bit just for us new people.
Yeah.
That I
And
think
is this for the contra or the English or both?
both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Oh, I see the lady with the questions again.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of really good questions rolling in. It's hard to be concise here, but we'll do our best. We have a question for Bernie and Louise. Do you think that you have more enthusiasm for the future than Colin does, because you are relatively new to dancing yourselves, so you know it can be attractive to others?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think about that, because I am new to folk dancing. Sort of. I mean, my father is a musician and he used to play for dances, and I grew up in the folk community. I just didn't grow up dancing. So I think that, yes, in a way, the fact that it took me so long to get to dancing gives me some sort of optimism about people who join in their 20s or 30s, that you don't have to be kind of, I mean, a lot of people who are really embedded in the American folk community were raised in it. And it's just sort of something they've done their whole lives, and there are generations of dancers and things like that, particularly people who are deeply involved and invested in it. But I remind myself that most of the dance community is not those people, you know, like Bernie was saying, like most people are club dancers, and they're not going to be turning this into even their primary hobby, let alone their whole life. And so perhaps that gives me optimism, because I came to it as an adult. Yeah. I don't know. Bernie, what do you think?
I don't know. Because there aren't many people in their 30s coming into it. I mean, and I don't know what the obsession is about having young people. Yes, I understand we want this to continue, but you know, is it good enough that we've just got people joining us? Is that good enough? You know, that people, if they come in their 40s, 50s, 60s, will that still keep us going? I don't know. So I'm enthusiastic. Yeah, and I'd like to be hopeful for the future, but I'm still waiting to see how our club evolves and whether we can really open it out to new people. But there are still people who are enthusiastic now and want it to thrive and continue, and it's just how we put that across to new people.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bernie, we've talked about this before, the idea that you are going to get committed new community members in their early 20s, mid 20s, like when they're having major career changes and sort of starting families, like that's not realistic. And so I think that in fact, targeting people who are slightly older, people whose children are in school and have some time back to themselves, and also people who've settled in a community. You know, I don't, have lived in a huge variety of places, and certainly in the town that I'm in right now, people are either completely transitory because they're associated with the university as students, and so they come, they're there for 4 years maybe, and then they leave, or they're people who've spent their whole lives there and are never leaving. And so there is a balance between you attract new people who may not be committed to the group, or you attract a community base where they are fitting something into a life that's already very stabilized. And so they can be sustaining community members. And I don't think that age is the primary defining factor there at all.
Okay, Rebecca, next one.
All right. We have quite a few questions about whether, like, how to handle if we're saying that these clubs should be folding. We have a lot of questions about, like, here's a really good one. Do we think that there's no place anymore for the old and less energetic? We love, and this person loves the idea of a dance community that continues to care about the elderly.
And I would use not my own group at OSU as an example, but I would use the Oklahoma City English dance community as an example, where at some point we had a core group of people and a core group of callers who were interested in doing more complicated things, more energetic things. And so we started an advanced series. And the regular class is still 100%, like, if you can stand, you are welcome to participate. That even might be too much of a limitation. Yeah, if you can move, however you do that, then you're welcome to participate. And we are really genuinely open about that. And we have a lot of dancers. I mean, I think if recovery is a skill that we value as dancers, which I think good dancers do, accommodating partners and kind of adapting to the people you're dancing with is also a skill that I value a lot as a caller and as a dancer. And so my favorite dancers in our community are the ones who really embrace dancers at every ability level. And so we have our regular Friday night English dance that's a venue for that. And then we have the advanced dance where we can stop and say, you know, we're going to do this until we get it right. And if you're not comfortable, then, like, sit this dance out. You can show up, but you might not succeed. And our goal here is success. And we try to do that kindly and generously, but we are very clear about the higher standard that we're aiming for there. And I think that in Stillwater, our little student group got there by default in the weekly workshop sessions, because there were students holding each other to that higher standard, the ones who would say, like, can we try that again, because it didn't feel right. And so, yeah, I think that it's something that you have to actively articulate as a norm in your space, is that idea of welcoming. But I don't think that anyone would say that they want to eliminate people. I've been really heartened by the fact that with the Zoom dancing, people who have fallen away from their dance community have found themselves coming back, because with Zoom dancing, it's kind of DIY activity level. And so people are discovering that they can come and be a part of a community that they thought they had been sort of removed from, and asking for Zoom dances to continue so that those people still have access. And I think that's inspiring, to be honest. I think that does make me think that we have a community that goes beyond just showing up for a dance and going home again.
And this brings me back to a club that I was involved with down in Gloucestershire, which is Hynham Folk Dance Club. And that was actually a club that was set up for callers to practice, but attracted a lot of dancers from a large distance. But Robert and Hazel Moyer were involved in that. And I think one of Hazel's skills is bringing everyone together and making everybody feel included. And so we had dancers there, older dancers, who would join in the dancing if they could. But if they couldn't, they would still come along for the session and sit at the side. But those dancers, those experienced dancers, are the people who actually taught me to dance well, because they could sit at the side and watch what I was doing and then would give me feedback. So I'd like to think that there's still a place, they've still got value. You know, they were giving me advice on my calling as well, and then when they were dancing when they could. And you can't lose that experience from the dance world. We're too new to know everything, and we need those people to kind of, you know, to be involved in the community as well. So I hope it's not coming across as, no, it's only for young people now who can slip a circle, because that's not what community is about.
All right, I've like I said, there's a lot of good stuff coming in.
Yeah.
But I think sort of to kind of bring it back around to the original idea of the discussion, kind of on the flip side of that, what kinds of things can we do for the younger generation to keep people interested and get them interested once they're through the door, is sort of where the question is headed.
I think a lot of that is about empowerment. That for me, what got the students involved the most was when they were making a lot of the decisions about the kind of dancing we were doing, about how often we were doing it, about where we did it. And I will be honest and say that part of, I said before, part of what kind of made us shrink significantly, going from about 75 dancers at a monthly dance to maybe 15. Part of it was that I left for a year, and the caller who took over from me also dropped out. She had a pretty big change in her job circumstances that made her have to drop out. So we lost a lot of momentum in that moment. But I think also what happened is that then when I came back, I was much more sort of directorial. I had new students to work with, and I was saying, here's what has to happen. And it wasn't coming from them anymore. And so over the course of that year after I was back, I really learned a lot of lessons about empowering people to make the decisions themselves and how that gets you buy-in. And we built our group kind of back up slowly as students felt like they were welcome, not only to come and dance, but to say things like, can we try this music? Like, I know it's not English country dance music, but I think it might be fun to do this instead. And by the end of that year, we had students writing dances to pop music that were English country dance style that we would experiment with. For Chinese New Year, we did a whole dance to Chinese pop music. And so we just kind of went with student energy. And I think that sometimes people are worried, like, oh, if you bring in that kind of hybrid experience, or if you let people use pop music, then you're going to end up where a lot of club squares in America are, where you just have people kind of wandering around in a pattern, and there's country music playing, but they don't really connect. But my experience was then they were like listening harder to the traditional music as well, and saying like, oh, let's do that dance because I like that tune. And they wanted that music too. They just wanted a variety. But in general, yeah, for me, I think inviting young people in and then giving them a say. And that's worked for us in Oklahoma, in our statewide organization as well, putting young people on the board, giving them a lot of authority to make decisions and to start new initiatives is really important.
Yeah, I think that's really important. If people feel that they're involved and genuinely involved, then they're much more likely to stay. What you don't want is you get some young person on the committee who suggests things and everyone else says, oh, we tried that 20 years ago, it doesn't work. Then they'll give up. And things may have changed. We got social media that we didn't have 20 years ago. Maybe they have got some good ideas, but the rest of the committee have got to be willing to give these people a chance and try some of the things that they think about. And maybe some of them won't work. You don't know until you've tried them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But Bernie, you
that's
don't let
been
people
my
make
experience
decisions.
of. No, no, we have a very small committee, but we make decisions quickly, and move on. But in terms of I think the original question was about what we can do to bring young people in.
Yeah.
Rebecca, was that the question? Sorry. Yes, it was.
Yes.
And yes, part of that is that empowering, but at the same time, I think be careful not to put too much pressure on people. You know, oh my God, here are the saviors of our club.
Oh, yes.
You know, that's a lot of pressure if you've walked in as the only 20, 30-year-old in the club. And the thing that I felt a lot of pressure when I first started was I can't turn up every week. I sometimes travel with my job, and sometimes, you know, I've got a young son, things happen and I can't be there every week. And I think we just have to be careful of the wording we use in those situations. You know, oh, we haven't seen you for a while. It's different to, oh, how lovely to see you again.
Yes.
And so just be mindful of how busy people are these days as well, would be my advice if you've got young people joining.
Yeah. Okay. Rebecca.
All right. So it's been asked, and I know we may touch on this in a little bit, but we're coming, you know, close to time. So a good question. Do EFDSS and CDSS contribute to the success of your respective clubs in any way?
That's an excellent question. Louise, I understand CDSS gave you some financial help.
It did. Yeah, we
Really?
when we started our group, we got a seed grant from CDSS. I think it was $500. And we also got support from our local Arts and Humanities Council. We got support from the university. We got support from the statewide organization. So we found ourselves, particularly early on, sort of cash rich in terms of being able to advertise and hire bands. And yeah, do the kind of recruiting that we needed to in whatever medium that took, which was a huge benefit. So on a totally sort of straightforward financial level, CDSS benefited us a lot. We also got a grant from them, I believe, to take students to a dance weekend. We then funded that through the university in subsequent years, but getting them out beyond just our local community and getting them see a festival atmosphere instead of just the local dances was really important to their education and kind of expansion of their vision for our club. And then CDSS, we had one of their board meetings. They do like traveling board meetings around the country, and we hosted them in Oklahoma one year. And they brought, I think, a lot of energy and enthusiasm. And again, that sense of that we're part of something bigger, which the students really responded to. So they literally, CDSS came to us, and that was huge. And then they have resources, you know, in terms of ways that you can advertise. They have a whole resource, and that's changed a lot over the years. But even early days, they had resources of sort of how to advertise your dance and how to organize a dance. What resources do you need? What does an event take? So basic guidelines. So we got a ton of support from CDSS in various ways.
Bernie, I hesitate to ask, but did you get any help from EFTAS?
If there's seed funding available at EFTAS, I wasn't aware of it. That would have been really helpful because obviously there are costs in setting it up. So the three of us have had to absorb that cost ourselves. So not only have we invested time in this, we've also invested our own money in this that we still haven't got back yet, but we were always on a 3-year plan with this. So no, I didn't get any financial contribution from EFDSS. But if there is anything out there, I'd like to know about it. So no, we pretty much went on our own with this. Obviously, we got the insurance, public liability insurance through EFDSS, which is hugely helpful. But for everything else, we've gone on our own.
Okay. Right, now I've got lots of other questions here, but I'm aware that it's 10 past, and we did say we would have a chat session at the end. So I think it's probably time for me to try and sum things up before everyone else asks questions. So it seems to me that what you're both saying is you start with a group of dancers who all have the same objective. I think in both your cases, the objective was to dance better. But you could have another group of dancers with a different objective, so long as they all think the same way. Have some good dancers who can help you from the floor. We didn't mention this time, but I know we did earlier, train people as backups for the necessary jobs, caller, musician, sound person, and so on. If you're not a good caller, find one. Have a small committee of like-minded people. Bernie has a committee of 3, and that seems to work very well for her, who will concentrate on the essentials and not endlessly discuss minor matters. And as Bernie just said, be prepared to pay for this yourselves for 3 years, unless you're in America. Be flexible, but don't compromise your standards. Get the dancers involved in the decision-making. And if it's not viable after 3 years, give up. I know we didn't cover all of those points now, but those are things that we've been talking about earlier, and I think they're all important. So, and we said we would end at past, which is in less than 20 minutes. So I would like to throw it open to people asking questions. There's 120 of you out there. If you all speak at once, no one's going to be heard. So show a bit of common sense, and I will turn it over to Rebecca or whoever to unmute everybody. And I have no idea what's going to happen now, but I will wait and find out.
So the way that this works, if there's a question that you have that is relevant to this topic that you haven't gotten to ask or that has not been asked yet or covered, go ahead in the side panel and raise your hand. I see a couple of raised hand. It's in the it should be in the bottom bar for you. And we will allow you to unmute yourself. So, all right, we've got a couple of them. All right, let's let Lisa Brown has a question. You should be able to unmute yourself at the moment.
Okay, so I put my question in the Q&A. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can't see you
Right.
though.
So my club is growing, and that is because we hooked our wagon to Jane Austen. And that draws the people in, and then they get hooked, and then they continue. And I was wondering if either Bernie's group or Louise's group ever entertain Janeites or the idea of Janeites in your recruiting.
We absolutely do. There's a student fair that happens at the beginning of the year, and in years where that happens, which it didn't this year because of the pandemic, we actively go out and say, are you interested in dancing? And then we always say, it's Jane Austen dancing. We are not shy about it. Because that's the only thing that people, particularly people in their 20s, recognize is sort of they've seen the Keira Knightley movie. And so they know Jane Austen style dancing, and we're trying to give them a sort of realistic impression. kind of like Bernie was saying with the videos, like if you have a mental picture of what to expect, then you are perhaps more likely to show up. So we did all the time. I used to call for the Jane Austen Society's convention in Dallas pretty regularly. So even our non-student group, we're definitely tied into Jane Austen fans, and yeah, that community.
How about you, Bernie?
No, I haven't tied myself to that wagon yet. I know other clubs were quite successful in recruiting new people in the early 90s when there was a big revival in the UK. But no, we've not gone down that route yet.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for the question. All right, we have a question from Bert Hunter.
Oh dear.
You should be able to.
Hello, Bert.
Hello, Colin. Hello, Bernie. Hello, Louise.
Hello, Bert. Nice to hear you again.
Okay, serious. If I can be serious for a minute, it's about as long as I can be serious. There is in recent years, there's the spectre of gender-free calling is loomed in the dance community, and I think it's in danger of causing a discontinuity, and there's not going to be the succession from younger to old, through NIFTY to IVDIF to dance clubs, or we tend to call them groups in our part of the world, by the way. Is anyone constructive suggestions how we can heal this rift?
Good luck.
I call gender free, I call positionally, and I call all over the UK, and so far no one has noticed. I think that's the way to heal the rift, is to just call in a way that everyone can understand, whether they're new generation or not, and that doesn't involve gender.
I've been intrigued by the positional calling, and I've been trying to gradually move across to positional calling. So I'm still in my transition phase for that. I don't know whether my club have noticed yet or not, and I may have given the game away now, but I still do use gender calling in our club, because that's mostly what people are used to. But
there are people who are even more virulent against it than I am, and that's saying something.
Yeah, but there are also.
So we sorry, Colin. We, in my little club with the students, we switched to gender free, and we did it using alternative role terms. And they voted on those. They invented their own. And so we did that for a while, but I realized that it wasn't a productive way forward, because I was calling, ultimately we were calling Larks and Robins, which has become pretty standard across the US at least. But I would call Larks and Robins in Stillwater, and then would have to move to a different community and wouldn't use Larks and Robins. All my cards said Larks and Robins, and I thought, this is crazy. Brooke Friendly has been using positional calling, and she wasn't even the first in her community to do it, but for decades. And I knew that she did that. I knew it was mostly English, but I'm like, this is adaptable to contra dancing. We should be doing this for contra too. And it meant that then once I had developed a dance that I teach and call, I could teach and call that dance in any community anywhere. And it avoided this situation, because traveling around the US, like I have been asked to call left file, right file. I've been asked to call Larks and Robins. I've been asked to call Larks and Ravens. I've been asked to call a variety of different things. And I was like, I could just use none of them and solve this problem. In both contra and English contexts, I mean, I said no one noticed. Yeah, bands and bears, exactly. Thanks for nothing, world. Sorry, I'm not supposed to read the chat, and I just did it. Yeah, and then I lost my train of thought too. So I think ultimately, I was gonna say that I've called all these different places, and when I said that no one noticed, literally I had an organizer make an announcement, like, you may have noticed that Louise is using gender-free calling, and people came to me and they're like, were you really calling gender free? They literally don't notice it. And I think that that is an ideal scenario. They're focused on the dance and the dancing. That's what I want as a caller.
I have called gender free when I had to, but what people don't realize is that you miss out a lot of dances. The caller will look at it and think, oh, that's going to be difficult to call. And so it just gets dropped from the repertoire. I was once calling at the gender free dance in Jamaica Plain near Boston, in Boston, sorry. And I was doing my dance, the Heathfield Rag. It's a 3-couple dance. And at one point, the end 2 couples are improper. And I suddenly said, so how do I say the 3 men circle left around the middle woman? And they all laughed, which sort of broke the ice. But it's very difficult to say the top window and the middle clock and the bottom window circle left around the middle window, which is what I would have had to say. And
Yeah.
so I really do believe that you're losing a lot of dances. Yeah, of course, if I'm calling something with the first corner set and turn single and 2-hand turn, yeah, I don't need to say the first man and second woman. I would say first corners, it's quicker. So there are cases where it works very well. But I'm afraid
Colin, I have yet to find a dance that I have thrown out completely. There are dances that are challenging, but I think it just, and I think a lot of people have been saying, like, we need more positional calling workshops, and perhaps that's true. But I think there's always an answer. It might not be the obvious or easy answer, but dances are geometry, and geometry can be explained.
Well, that's true.
We should probably redirect back to our original topic, or maybe a new question at this point. Not to cut it off, but I'm cutting it off.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I see Patricia has a hand raised for some time now, so I'm going to allow you to unmute.
Hi, this is Patricia's spouse. We're sharing a computer, and I just wanted to make sure that all of these wonderful questions that we don't get a chance to see, and the comments that we do get a chance to see but don't get a chance to hold on to, and the wonderful conversation from you 3 experts in the field are all going to be available at a later time. Question? Yes or no?
Yeah. Certainly the video is being recorded and it will be available. As soon as it's available, we'll put a link onto the Friends of Cecil Sharp House website, fcsh.org.uk. I will probably also put a link on my website, colinhume.com.
Thank you, Colin.
Yes, you won't see the chat, I don't think, but you will see what you've seen on your screens.
Will we see the wonderful questions that people have been asking that only Patricia has seen?
I don't think so, but Louise is an expert.
We could save them. I can try to put together a digest of the chat and Q&A comments that we can publish along with the video.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Colin.
You too. Not that I did see you, but I heard you.
I'm Bob Morris.
Right.
Met you at NLM.
All right. Again, if you have a question that has not been answered here, then go ahead and raise your hand. I don't see any other raised hands at the moment.
Where are all these English people? All these questions are from Americans.
Oh, great. We have two more. Jim Morgan has a question.
Just you didn't talk very much about, I think Louise mentioned having live music at her monthly dance and recorded music for more variety, and Bernie didn't say much about it. Do you think that's really important for the liveliness of the new dances?
We have recorded music, so I don't have access to a live band, but I think the choice of music that you do use is crucial. That all adds to the atmosphere, it all adds to how you're moving. So I think regardless of whether you're using recorded or live music, you have to put thought into the quality of that music. And and
Yeah.
what it brings to the evening.
And of the equipment.
Sorry,
'Cause
Colin.
if you've got a really bad record player from the 1940s, then it's not going to sound very good.
Yeah, true.
A lot of emphasis gets placed on live music, at least here in the States. And then when I was traveling around calling in the UK, discovered that most people expected me to bring recordings as the caller. And I have to say that the flexibility and the ease of recordings is a huge benefit. When we were starting up the student group, it meant that we weren't lugging sound equipment. We weren't having to find a space where we could set that up. We could dance wherever we wanted to, including we did demo dances out on the library lawn at the university. And all we needed was a Bluetooth speaker in order to do that. So that was a huge advantage for us of recordings. And I think students listen to so much recorded music that while they experience and understand the benefit of a live band, they have no objection whatsoever to dancing to recordings. And most of us don't. We spend our whole lives listening to recorded music, which is not to sort of limit the value of live music at all, but it is, in a small town like mine, impossible to find.
But it's interesting that there is a general attitude in the States that, oh, of course we have live music, and therefore they go out and find it. Whereas in England, the attitude is, oh, we couldn't afford live music. And there are plenty of musicians that don't charge or that are not very expensive and would love the chance to play. So I think the clubs in England really should look around more for live music, because I believe it gives you a much better atmosphere. Yeah, I can see the advantages of recorded music, I know. And also I know that some callers are terrified of the thought of live music, because with a recording, you know exactly what it's going to do. It's going to go through 7 times and then stop. You don't have to slow it down or speed it up. It won't argue with you. But I was lucky. I started off calling to live music, and I'm the other way around. I have no experience of recording music and I'm not good at it.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that though, Colin, because having said earlier that we were cash rich when we started our club, one of the first things I did was went to our music faculty and said, you know, do you have any students who are interested in early music or in contradance style music? And he said, well, how much would you pay them? And I said, well, we pay bands $150 a night. And he just laughed at me and said, you're not going to get anyone to do it for that much money, and turned me away. Wouldn't even offer it to his students because it wasn't paying enough. So that was a dramatic shutdown to me. Used to the folk community, you know, drive hundreds of miles for tens of dollars, etc.
You'd think that the students would welcome a chance to go out and play to an audience for free.
Yeah. So I mean, it depends where you are. I think there's just a huge variety. And yeah, where to find musicians can be a different challenge in a hyper local way. Until I moved to Oklahoma, I also hadn't called to recorded music, so it was new to me too.
Yeah.
All right, I've been asked to ask. It's quite a long question from Derek Schofield. Colin wants clubs to stop and then at some later date to start again, but there is the danger that clubs would start up again in the same format. How should clubs start again? Bernie and Louise are running successful clubs, but they are basically taking the established format, but doing it better. There's a lot of detail here. Douglas Kennedy used the disruption of the war to reinvent folk dance, away from classes toward clubs, public dances with easier dances that people could do without prior teaching. The dances were chosen appropriately, now termed Kaylee dances. Now the clubs generally do not do these easier dances. How do you bring together teaching, classes, public profile through public dances, accessibility, etc., etc.?
Right, that's a large question. And obviously I'm now being seen as a bad guy because I'm saying that I think the club should fold up. And I don't think it's good. I'm not happy about that. But it just seems to me that a lot of clubs, not all of them, a lot of clubs are so entrenched in their ways that they're not going to change, that they will say, oh, we would like to have some new younger dancers, but they're not willing to put themselves out. Any club that will do something, I think, will reap the benefits. But a lot of the clubs just won't change. And if they don't change, then I'm not saying kill them off. I just think they will die out anyway. Over to the other two.
I don't know what to say to that, to the question. What was the final part of the question, Rebecca? It was about making dances accessible, how we
Bringing back the
balance.
Cayley dances. It's true. How often do you find?
How do you bring together the teaching, classes, public profile, accessibility, et cetera, et cetera? And in the beginning, it was asking just how do clubs start again when that time comes?
I don't know. I think this is always, it's always about need, is it not? I mean, both of us started it because there was a need. And I think about, if you think about disruptive dance now as well, you've got techno contra that's going on, that's doing something different as well, but that's meeting a need as well in their community, which doesn't answer your question, Derek, I know, but I think if clubs are going to start again, what is their purpose? I was having this discussion with my husband earlier today. You know, it's all very well clubs being social clubs, but if you're just a social club who happen to do some dancing, can you ever attract new dancers? Because that social element is all about you as those people, and it's very difficult then for new people to come in to that social community. How do you break that? You know, so you're not really a dance club. I don't really know where I'm going with it. Difficult one.
Yeah,
Louise, that point about meeting a need. I was going to say the point about meeting a need is really key, right? That it's a tricky balance between someone with the initiative to find out if there's a need, or to offer a service, I guess, is what we do ultimately as callers. And then respond to the energy that you get back, right? Like, do you have a lot of people saying, yes, we want this, or are they saying, well, we sort of want that, but we want something slightly different? How amenable are you to that different thing? But it will be interesting, even just when we come back from COVID, to see what people want and how they configure themselves. And I don't think there is an answer, unfortunately. I wish that there was an easy one.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're supposed to stick to a schedule. I know we have lots of questions, and we'll try to get those at least taken down in an email. But I guess I will hand it back at this point, because I think we're supposed to be finishing up.
Yeah, well, we did say we would finish at past. And yes, I know we could go on for a long time, but some people probably have other things to do. So thank you all for watching and contributing. I hope you've got some new ideas and encouragement from what you've heard. I'm sorry that I'm a bit negative about it, but that's the way I am. I'd like to thank Judith DeWitt from the Friends of Cecil Sharp House for arranging everything, Rebecca Valencia for handling the technical stuff, and of course our two guests, Louise Siddons and Bernie Culkin. And as I said, once the recording of this is available, I'll put a link on the homepage of the Friends of Cecil Sharp House and one on my own website. I hope to see many of you on the dance floor before too long. And I think that just about wraps it up. So thank you all and goodbye.